When do we start? It was a couple of meetings at the school. I suppose we ended like five, 10 minutes. Yes, it's done. We can do 10 minutes. In 5 minutes we start inviting people back in.
My name is Richard. We didn't talk. Very nice to meet you. Yeah, I'm not sure if you were here, but we finished the previous platform. So, I think we should. That's how I
Putting it on there, I don't know when the last. I don't know my pocket.
Let's wait for a while.
I don't know where I got this. There was some Russian so yeah, it's pretty rare.
So you saw how the
I think that that also
you can also do that Spanish.
I just said I'm on vacation and I just came back directly. But let's just take maybe we'll see.
So actually, my understanding, we start with
it's done well.
but for the companies that research on this, there was a conference. He also said that
Interesting. What specifically were they?
they have to say it's yeah. Okay, the idea is that every single article on every single so something we are using how so, I think future doctor. Okay, your sample is video reservation. Oh, you can use it either. I think
Shota, how are you? Looking forward to having you on our panel. Good to see you. I always wanted to say thank you. How are you?
I'm
Why?
Yes.
Parliament, how are that?
Actually, yes, several times. I lost of the focus in the election.
Let's start maybe from there. No. The left side.
I'm not these species, they're also out there.
That I would lose my
That's for sure.
said
I think by doing
I
that.
had to say for most of the work. I would do it. I would have liked you no,
Nice. We can start with Bell.
movie.
You also looked at everything.
I mean, Razia mı geldi başına?
Dear colleagues, dear guests, let's start our panel. First of all, let me begin our job with the words of gratitude to the organizers for this really excellent event which is very important, especially now when the region we're going to talk about is experiencing, I think, one of the most challenging periods of war late. We have many challenges today. One of them is the audience after lunch, but we will manage, I think, with all of them because the topic is really very important, intriguing, difficult, needed very sophisticated approach. But we have, on the other hand, excellent team of speakers who are here to talk on the issue. South Caucasus has experienced, I would say, very dramatic development in terms of political processes around in the so-called international surrounding of the region, as well as internal developments. Many of them could change the mode of activities, action of all bodies within the region considerably. That is why today's discussion bears, I would say, special sense. Changes around started as far as our main goal of this series of the conferences is to monitor to some extent what's going on, what is changing year by year. In this sense, we are talking about the time passed after the last our meeting, and exactly within this time frame, we have witnessed many important, some of them even scary developments. The Brexit started this time. We have, I would say, still unpredictable consequences of the American elections. We faced difficulties in the north and very dramatic even, I would say, terrible bloodshed in the south, in the Middle East. We have changes witnessing in our neighbor Turkey, and at the same time, we are witnessing changes within our countries. Elections in Georgia, elections in Armenia, quite specific changes in the political settings in Azerbaijan, and many still unanswered questions. Where this region is heading, what is ahead of us, and what kind of influence all these developments we will have on our faith. So these are the, I would say, set of questions we have to try to address today. Now about the team present here. I already said that we have excellent set of experts. I'll start from here. Mr. Shukta Mutiashvili is a fellow of the Georgian Foundation of Strategic and International Studies, as we call it, from Delhi Foundation. His experience as a diplomat, as a statesman, public servant, and now researcher gives us optimism that his outlook will be comprehensive and interesting. Mr. Zaur Shiriev, Academy Fellow of the Chatham House. I think he's known to the at least many representatives of the expert community present here. Mr. Richard Kiragosyan, to my right, he's leading the regional study centers in Armenia. Richard traditionally takes part in such a panels at this conference traditionally, and we together are, I would say, following those developments in the South Caucasus I just talked about. It's my honor to present also Mr. Mithat Chelik-Pala, am I right? Professor of the Caucasus University, Istanbul. And I think name of Mr. Joshua Kucher also is known to you, or at least to many of us in this audience. Editor of the Eurasian Net on Turkey Caucasus issues. So we have here a really mighty team, and now we are ready to start talking about the problems which we have all to understand better than we did it before the meeting. This is the main objective of our panel. We agreed that the preliminary, I would say, the introductory remarks will take 10 minutes to each other, to each of you, and then we are ready to discuss issues in both traditional and non-traditional ways. Okay? If there is no other question on the logistics, please. I would like to give the floor to Mr. Shota. Shota, please.
Well, thank you very much for this very kind words of introduction. And we are all very delighted to see that even after lunch we have almost fully packed room. So our task is, is even more hard. So I was asked to speak about the new dynamics in the South Caucasian conflicts. And indeed, there have been important developments. We have seen Armenian-Azeri conflict flared up last year with a significant number of casualties. We have seen Russia continuing its creeping annexation of Abkhazia and South Ossetia. Just yesterday, Russia's foreign minister, Mr. Lavrov, was in Sukhumi. South Ossetia even changed its official name as a result of the so-called referendum to make it more Russian sounding. There have been also military agreements signed by South Ossetia and Russia. But I think what the most important and the troubling development of the last year was, and what will likely continue to be this year, is the increased militarization of the Black Sea. And by militarization, of course, I mean the Russian militarization. Let's look at the key facts first. In August 2016, Russia deployed S-400 air defense systems to Crimea. And in January of this year, they were declared fully operational. For those of us who are not well familiar with the military equipment, S-400 is an air defense system with about 400 kilometers radius, which means that this system deployed in Crimea covers almost the entire central part of the Black Sea. Russia has also announced that it plans to invest at least $2.3 billion in the development of the Black Sea fleet by the year of 2020. And with that money, it wants to acquire 80 new vessels for the Black Sea fleet alone. In 2015, Russian President Putin has declared that Russia has deployed its most advanced anti-ship system called Bastion in Crimea, which also gives Russia a very significant military capability to counter the NATO ships that sail in the Black Sea. Also in 2016, it was reported that Russia will probably soon deploy Iskander ballistic missiles to Crimea. Most likely that might happen in 2019. You know, what Russia is doing in the Black Sea very much resembles to what it has already done in the Baltics and also in the Western Mediterranean by the coast of Syria. In both Baltics and in the Western Mediterranean, we see deployment by Russia of the same kind of weapons, same kind of capabilities. It's easy to understand why the Russians are deploying these weapons in Syria, because there is a war going on. It's also easy to understand why they are deploying those weapons to the Baltics, because they see Baltics as the weakest link in NATO and think that they can put pressure on Baltics and therefore put pressure on NATO. But why are they deploying these weapons so close to Georgia? And besides the Crimea, there has been important developments even closer to home. In the end of 2015, Russia and Armenia signed an agreement about the joint, creating joint air defense command. The Russians already have the air defense system in Armenia that they operate. The Armenians have another, the same kind S-300 air defense system that Armenians operate. And then there is a third system that is located in Caucasus. So if you look at these three systems, what you would see is that Georgia's almost entire airspace is covered by the Russian air defense. So in 2008, if we saw that Georgia's friends, like the United States, could deploy American planes to bring back Georgian troops from Iraq, or to bring humanitarian aid with the military transport planes, in times of crisis, this kind of a move by Georgia's friends and allies would be much more risky. In the military terms, what experts call this strategy is A2AD, anti-access area denial, which means that you deploy the weapon in the area that will make it extremely hard for your opponent to access the area or to operate there. And if you look at the weapons deployed, we will see that the ships and planes that are supposed to bring aid to Georgia in terms of crisis will be themselves endangered on the way to Georgia, or to Baltics, or to Western Mediterranean, as mentioned above. But why is Russia deploying these forces and capabilities in Georgia so actively? You know, the easiest and probably most optimistic answer is to deter Georgia's membership to NATO. Unfortunately, many people in NATO think that because of the Russian capabilities in the Black Sea now, it will be very, very hard for NATO to defend Georgia if there is a serious military escalation and a classical type or the hybrid type military attack. Therefore, some might think that the best way to defend Georgia is to halt its progress towards NATO so that Russians don't feel that their red lines are crossed and they have to react, because Russians have said many times that Georgia's membership to NATO is the red line for them. But I also think that this strategy is not exactly the right one. And why so? First of all, what do we know about the Russian red lines? Where exactly are the Russian red lines? Well, they say that NATO membership is the red line, but if you look at Ukraine's case, such a seemingly trivial thing as signing association agreement with the EU has become a Russian red line. And even if we know where the Russian red lines are, how do we know that they are not moving, like the Russian occupation line is moving in South Ossetia? And if there is no one to challenge them, who can guarantee that these red lines don't move very dangerously close? Like hypothetically, is changing a Russia-friendly regime a red line for Russia? We don't know, because probably Russians don't know themselves. Secondly, it's not necessary that Russian aggression is only motivated by Georgia or its Western partners by crossing some red lines. Russians might start war because of domestic political considerations, or for proving their prestige internationally, once more attacking a pro-Western or Western-friendly country to prove their might. Therefore, I think what NATO needs to do and what West needs to do and what it has already started to do with this Black Sea security strategy is to look deeper at Georgia's security needs and to make sure that it has adequate safeguards in place and loud and clear commitment of helping Georgia defend itself in time of crisis. Otherwise, Georgia is too vulnerable, and with increased Russian militarization of the Black Sea, it is going to become much more vulnerable. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Shota, for your interesting explanation why Russia is doing this kind of strange things in this part of the world. We all agree that definitely Russia has its vision of the developments and in future possible steps, and is preparing to address them the way they understand it and the way they understand their national interests. Where these interests lay, this is the question. Okay. We will touch upon this point, I think, many times today and tomorrow. So, thank you. Now, let me go to Mr. Zaud Shiriev, to the expert who knows profoundly developments in the region and around. So
thank you, Ambassador. It's a pleasure to be here. I would probably the most important thing is here to discuss the post-April situation, especially its effect and what's happening in the Nagorno-Karabakh conflict resolution process. And due to the limited time, I'm not going to tell about or talk about the reason and what happened, but in general, I'm going to talk about the military and also diplomatic assumptions, mostly from Azerbaijan perspective. So it's like, actually right now is that there is a fragile status quo. It's like there's a revised pitch stroke. It says that when the clock goes forward, it goes tic-tac. When the Azerbaijan and Armenian arms goes backward, it's a tactic. So that's why, in tactical way, it's hard to predict that when to see a next kind of the similar actions what happened in April. But the core assumption is that starting the first is the Russian mediation. There was a growing interest and growing belief after the April that Russia will take and lead the negotiation process and it will end at tangible results. So there were mentioned several times about a Lavrov plan. Actually, there is no Lavrov plan, and even the Lavrov has no plan. At the end, we understood in recent months. So what the Russian plan was that is using the method principles and also the some principles as agreed in the Kazan back to 2011 and to move forward with tangible results. From Azerbaijan perspective, the tangible results was that to liberation at least one or two occupied territories back. So this territory is not makes a strategic significance to Armenia, the armed forces of Nagorno-Karabakh, also this, but it makes a road to the peaceful resolution. So, but it started with April, and this belief ended in August 2016, when the Russian President Vladimir Putin very clearly stated that we will be able to play a role when Azerbaijan and Armenian leaders will be ready to negotiations or to agree something. So, so it's like that since 2012, since the third term of the Putin, he tried two times to meeting of the two presidents, first in 2014 in August, and second in the 2016 on June. So the both was that aim to reduce the tensions between Azerbaijan and Armenia. So unfortunately, despite the Azerbaijan side believe that Russia will play an instrumental role, this belief comes from the fact that Azerbaijan in the last 3 or 4 years and much more engaged with Russia in expense of the antagonizing with the West, and also being a much more neutral position towards the Russia and playing a very good game in this sense. So right now, this is the fact that there is a Russian monopolization and also there is a Russian not activization of the process. This is the one assumption. The second assumption is about the other Western co-chairs, United States and France. In the both co-chairs countries recently held election of the Trump, and also we are going to see the next president of the France, and mostly probably the both presidents are not interested to involve any kind of the high-level involvement in Nagorno-Karabakh conflict resolution. Both countries' interest is just to reduce any kind of the military changing of the military rhetoric, just to keep negotiations in the low level, and also to pushing the Russia to be more active in this process. So this assumption makes the fact that it's hard to predict, at least in coming months or coming years, a very good kind of the golden moment from the Western countries. And then I think third point and most more important point for me is that what Azerbaijan and Armenia leaders are discussing right now. What's the basic document? So are they discussing Madrid principles, or are they back to the square one? And this is the question that posed to many members of the expert community. And so that's why there is a lot of the misunderstanding about the discussion of the negotiation. So there's one important, or also something emerged from Azerbaijan side, that might Russia will interested in negotiation table with the activization of the Turkey in this process. So pre-2015, before the 1915 events anniversary, Turkish position was to offer extents of lands in opening to the border, Turkish-Armenian border. Like if the Azerbaijan, Armenia is, let's say, they occupy two territories, then there's an opening of the telecommunication or opening the border. So right now, actually, it seems that Russians has interest on this project because since Russia and Armenia is a member of the Eurasian Economic Union, and there is a no geographical connectivity, and the only way is Georgia. And recently, the Russian leadership has much more discussing this issue, and they put forward the new format, trilateral format, Azerbaijan, Russia, and Turkey. So I'm skeptical about this format and its the result, but it's also a new, let's say, idea on the horizon how to activization Russia. And the last thing, from diplomatic point of view, is about the trust of the leadership. So this is the most important thing is that there's a decreased trust between the leadership. And also, since the parliamentary election in the Armenia and the change of the government system, in terms of the starting the next year after the presidential elections, there will be a new system, parliamentary system in Armenia, and let's say the fate in Azerbaijan, the most discussing question is the fate of the Sargsyan. Are Sargsyan going to be a main representative of the negotiation table, or is he going to be behind of the scene? It's important not because the leadership level distrust between the two leaders. Also, it's important how will be impact it's in Nagorno-Karabakh, because actually the Sargsyan is represented and somehow informal Nagorno-Karabakh. Let's say his presence also makes somehow his power to force or to push something or on the agenda if they will something agreed between the two nations, so that he has a most probable position. At least it's perceived in Azerbaijan, but some of them are perceived some very not positively. So that's why after the next year, what will be in Armenia. So in diplomatic sense, it is, and the inventory I'm going to very short. The first of all, after the April, Azerbaijan it helped to repair image of the army, and also it helped to realize that military rhetoric has sometimes effect in the field, like in the tactical field. But interesting, the one thing that since 2015, the population started questioning the military spending more because of the economic decline in the country. But since April war, actually in this year's budget, right now the military spending is 17.5% of the Azerbaijan state budget. So they increased the military budget for purchasing a new military equipment. So this is right now it's a tolerable thing. But if it's going to continue like this, this will be led and more pressure to military leadership to similar kind of the success in the line of contact. This is the second is that all out of the war possibility is increased. At least it perceived. I will say it perceived in Azerbaijan because I'm not person that to say it's reality, but it's my perception that because of the two things, especially after the constitutional change in the unorganized Nagorno-Karabakh also this could seek to a formal independence recognition or de jure recognition by Armenia or other countries. So this is the one option, or at the minimum, it's could be they will try to open the airport in Karabakh, which is operational but is not functional because of the Azerbaijan Israel. So if they will imagine that if it's going to happen, it will be a casus belli, and the reason for all out of the war. And I think one more point is that since the April, actually Armenia, Russia deployed a much more devastating weapons to Armenia. I know that there's an audience more knowledgeable people from Armenia who they know that actually the Iskandars deployed Armenia before the April. But right now, it was at least the 4 or 5 months it was questioned in Azerbaijan not who owns the Iskandar, who controls the Iskandar. So we believe in Azerbaijan that actually it's control under Moscow and the push button on the Moscow hand. But right now it was clarified by Armenian leadership or military leadership that is actually not the case. So it is opening the Pandora's box for ballistic missile strike, especially Azerbaijan became a much more vulnerable, as at the same time Armenia became vulnerable from the other geographical side, from Nakhchivan, which is 40 kilometers to Armenian capital, but it's the economic damage as such kind of the ballistic missile to Azerbaijan will cost 10-15 billion US dollars. So this is let's say few assumptions on diplomatic and military front. So probably it will be better to hear my colleague Richard and Joshua military and then there will be much more questions probably. Thank you.
Thank you. It's really one of, I would say, the most important question for the region as the Karabakh problem represent the centerpiece of South Caucasian stability problematics. So definitely what we have had deserves not only comments, but I think some explanations, if possible. Therefore, I would ask other participants to reflect on that. Now, let me give the floor to our colleague, Mr. Richard Kirabosyan, Director of the Center of Regional Studies and our regular participant of this conference. Please, Richard.
Thank you very much. Thank you to both Strakpol and the Rondelli Foundation for the opportunity to be back in Tbilisi. But first, an apology. For those expecting an Armenian-Azerbaijani wrestling contest, you will be disappointed. But I also have an admission. As good as it is to be back in Tbilisi, I'm frustrated. I'm greatly frustrated that every year we are moving farther away from solving our conflicts and security. Moreover, this region never misses an opportunity to miss an opportunity in terms of moving forward. And I want to continue discussing the Nagorno-Karabakh conflict following my friend and colleague, Mr. Shiryev. But first and foremost, the Nagorno-Karabakh fighting 1 year ago this month was significant for several reasons. It was significant as the most serious fighting or combat operations since the early 1990s. It was also significant because it was successful for Azerbaijan. It was the first time in many years Azerbaijan militarily met clear and coherent military campaign objectives. Those objectives were, for the first time, to seize and secure territory, no matter how small, but it represented perhaps not a victory, but a success. Moreover, it was a success after years of Azerbaijan's justified frustration. Frustration over the lack of progress whatsoever from the peace process. It was also significant because it was very seductive. It was seductive as a distraction for Azerbaijan from its domestic economic problems, but also potentially dangerously seductive as the conflict in this region with the most dangerous potential to draw in or force reactions by much larger regional powers. But it's also important, looking back 1 year ago, to examine what did not happen. In terms of the fighting over Nagorno-Karabakh, what was most interesting was Armenia's limited response. There was no mobilization. There wasn't the full deployment of Armenia's arsenal. In many ways, this was a rare example of prudent restraint by the Armenian leadership. What it also demonstrates, though, is the absence of deterrence, where in many ways nothing and no one is stopping a repeat of hostilities. And in terms of the outcomes, the lessons learned, both militarily as well as politically. The first, the Russian lesson learned. For Russia, the outcome, I would say, was the paradox of power. In other words, Russia, in many ways, does not control events on the ground in Nagorno-Karabakh. There was a weakness of Russia in the immediate chain of events, but in many ways, it submitted to developments on the ground, the outbreak of fighting. But that weakness was offset by Russia's strength of response, where even in Washington and Paris and Brussels, there's a realization, if not recognition, that it's Russia, and in many ways only Russia, that can respond quickly and effectively in the event of hostilities. For Armenia, what was most interesting was there were some positive developments. One was recognition for the first time of corruption within Armenia as a threat to national security, elevating corruption to a much less tolerated, much more egregious threat to national security. And to be honest, last April also demonstrated the demise or death of the Armenian myth of invincibility, where, to be honest, Nagorno-Karabakh is a challenge for Armenia psychologically. As the first military victory in over 2,000 years, it's very hard to climb back down. But what it also demonstrated was, for Azerbaijan, the lessons learned. It demonstrated that a military success could be achievable after years of empty rhetoric and threats. It also revealed the absence of deterrence in terms of nothing preventing Azerbaijan once again from resorting to force of arms over diplomacy. For Georgia, most significantly, last year's fighting only highlighted Georgia is in a precarious position, caught in between its close strategic energy-based reliance on Azerbaijan and its very stable and friendly relations with Armenia. Georgia, in many ways, is in a lose-lose position in the event of hostilities over Nagorno-Karabakh. What's interesting as well, Turkey has also become trapped in a similarly precarious position, where in many ways the danger for Turkey is in being forced to respond and forced to act by the little brother of the relationship, Azerbaijan. Moreover, many in Turkey worry that in the event of renewed hostilities, it would be forced or threatened into a confrontation with Russia, which is against Turkish national interests. And finally, the lesson learned for the West was perhaps an abrupt and sudden demonstration that the West has little leverage, even less presence, and demonstrates the danger of Western inattention, strategic neglect of Nagorno-Karabakh. But let's turn to what's coming next. In many ways, what's next is probably most important. There is still a risk of a war, but not officially. There is little chance of an official declaration of war and full mobilization. Militarily, the risk is of a war by accident, based on miscalculation and threat misperception. Secondly, the lack of deterrence is actually removing another disincentive to renewed hostilities. But what's most important is the third possible outcome, the realization that in the event of renewed hostilities, the context is very different than last April. On the one hand, Azerbaijan would lack the element of surprise that was so crucial in last year's fighting. Second, the defensive positions, Armenia and Nagorno-Karabakh, have greatly improved. And this is why I'm concerned, not only for the risk of renewed hostilities, but in the event of renewed hostilities, unlike last year, this time will be much more serious with much higher casualties. Given the lack of surprise and the better defended positions means this will quickly bog down into a war of attrition, tempting each side to introduce heavier weapon systems and greater targeting of civilian and critical infrastructure, meaning that while the context has changed, the casualties and the conflict spillover will be greatly enhanced. And finally, in conclusion, what's most important in looking at this issue is in conclusion, there is no conclusion. This is a dynamic, very dynamic and not static process. But there are two observations. One, of course, is the negative. Force posture and proximity today is only increasing the danger of escalation and war by accident. And politically, in both Armenia and Azerbaijan, militant political discourse has gained the upper hand over more moderate voices. The positive, and it's always helpful to close with a positive. There are two policies of the Armenian government I support wholeheartedly, and it's very hard to find any policy of the Armenian government to support wholeheartedly. The first is a policy of no preconditions toward Turkey, normalizing relations. The second is an Armenian government policy that remains in effect despite and not because of the fighting last April. The policy where the occupied territories of Azerbaijan, beyond the borders of Nagorno-Karabakh, are bargaining chips to be negotiated back to Azerbaijan in the course of the negotiations. This is very important as a final reminder of the need to reiterate what are the incentives for peace and not war? Why is diplomacy the only alternative? And reiterating the need to remind everyone of the need for concession and compromise on all sides. Thank you.
Many thanks, Jude, for the very, very interesting observation, which also was as almost intriguing. This is good. I think one of the conclusions we can draw from what we heard just is that this conflict has a multifaceted outlook, which I would say sheds its effects, both positive and negative, whatever, to many aspects of regional political development, security developments, and so on. And it was very interesting to hear that all of these aspects being highlighted clearly. Thank you. Now we have two, I would say, views how this conflict development, how the last year development is with regard to the conflict is viewed from two different perspectives, but from the inner space, we can get some assessment from abroad, from important, so let's say, points to analyze what's going on there. Therefore, it's my pleasure to give the floor to Mr. Mithat Çelikpala, Professor, Kadir Has University, Istanbul. How all these developments is seen from Turkey.
Thank you. Thank you, Your Excellency. I'd like to thank the organizer as well. It's my pleasure to share my view, in fact, regarding Turkey's position in all those developments, and it's very nice to be in Tbilisi once again. Therefore, thank you very much. And the title of our session is Old Conflicts and New Dynamics. In fact, in Turkey, we are not short of new dynamics on a daily basis in the last couple of years, in fact. Therefore, it is not easy to analyze Turkey's exactly all the new dynamics and to set a perspective, or Turkish perspective of regional security dynamics. And for Turkey, regions are many, and dynamics are much more than that. And it is not easy to understand if, especially domestic developments, effects on all those regional issues, or regional issues effects on domestic issues. It's a big mixture, and it's not easy to understand even for a Turkish analyst, and therefore it's tough to analyze. I would like to start with this April 2016 events, in fact, what happened and what about Turkey's response to those developments in Turkey. And you know, the traditional Turkish position regarding the Caucasus or those conflicts is to respect the territorial integrity of all those regional countries, which means Georgia and Azerbaijan in the Caucasian case. Therefore, territorial integrity of all those two states that are much more important. Still, this is a priority. And secondly, the peaceful resolution of all those conflicts. This is beyond Turkey's capacity to resolve those issues, but Turkey tried to position itself in all those conflicts as a regional actor, not only outsider, but try to push the resolution in a peaceful way. But in this case, in April, after April, there is no need to say that, of course, especially in Nagorno-Karabakh issue, Turkey stands just next to Azerbaijan. This is the case, but try to balance what's going on in most of those clashes related with the Nagorno-Karabakh issue. But in this case, after April, the president, I checked what they said just after the incident or the clashes, skirmishes between two parties, and our president said that Turkey backs Azerbaijan to the end, and to the end is real to the end. To that case, because for the first time we saw that Azerbaijani forces are in a favored position, and Azerbaijani public mood is so high, and there are some clues, maybe, let's say, and the president says we are going to support Azerbaijan to the end over the disputed Karabakh region. And then, after those expressing his condolences over the death of Azerbaijani citizens and, of course, military personnel, he said, we pray our Azerbaijani brothers will prevail in these clashes. And this is a position. And he criticized openly and directly international community, namely OSCE, because of their disaffectiveness or Minsk group's weakness, let me say, if it is the true word. Because the Minsk group failed to find some resolution to support its position to the parties, and it's not part of it. And these are the issues that we have to think regarding Turkey's traditional position as well. The then Prime Minister, Davutoğlu, said the whole world needs to know that Turkey will stand shoulder to shoulder with Azerbaijan against Armenians' aggression and occupation until doomsday. This was the position, and we as 78 million will continue standing by Azerbaijan until all territories of Azerbaijan which are under occupation are rescued. And this is the position, and the Ministry of Foreign Affairs naturally condemned Armenia most of the time by using heavy weapon attacks that are carried out against Azerbaijan. This was the position in 2016. Why this Turkish positioning is a little different than the previous or the traditional attitude? Then we need to step back and look at the events or developments in and around Turkey. And you know, from the beginning of summer 2015, Turkish-Russian relations has started to sort of change in a negative way. They put last decade or and a half better relations with Turkish-Russian relations has started to change. Not because of Russian-Georgian war, not because of Crimean invasion, just because of Syria, developments in Syria, Turkey's southern borders. And this is very important. And that brings a sort of Turkish-Russian war. And you know, it was the peak point, November 2015, the Russian downing of Russian bomber aircraft by a Turkish flight jet. This is a an important event that affects not only Turkish-Russian bilateral relations, but Turkey's security perspective all around Turkey's neighborhood. Not only in the Black Sea, we had the panel, previous panel, we tried to discuss, but in the Caucasus, in Aegean and Mediterranean, and as well as Middle East and the other regions. And this affected all those issues. And up to the Turkish or President Erdogan's letter to President Putin in June 2016, and then afterwards we had a coup d'etat, failed coup d'etat in Turkey. These are the issues that we have to try to understand the security environment, not only in the Caucasus, but in all those regions. Just keep in mind all those days and events. I may open or go to the details after questions. There are a couple of issues that I would like to raise in terms of security. The first one is there are some kind of limitations in the security environment of Turkey. The first one is how to develop a sort of brand new security policy, not only in the Caucasus, Turkish foreign policy, security policy, or contribution to the region, not only in the Caucasus, but in the Middle East, in the Black Sea, and all those surrounding regions. One is Russia's new military buildup. It was for the first time, it was a concern after the collapse of the Soviet Union for Turkey. 1990s are different, but for the 21st century, for the first time, Turkey has some serious concerns regarding Russian military buildup in all those regions, not only in the Caucasus, in the Black Sea, but in the Middle East as well. And secondly, Russian anti-access area denial bomb. Turkey is at the heart of this area of denial, and Turkey is encircled. This is a sort of Russian containment of Turkey, a NATO member country. Most of the time, Russians are very critical of NATO or Western allied countries to contain Russia. But in this case, Turkey is contained by Russia from all over those regions, from Armenia to Crimea, from the western shores up to Eastern Mediterranean, Syria, Middle East. This is an issue. Thirdly, the transatlantic alliances diverse approaches in all those issues. For the first time, most probably, Turkish decision makers started to understand Georgians and the others, because we have different signals from our traditional allies. Of course, Turkey's position and signals are also questions from the other side, but this is the case. And it was mentioned in the previous panel, Montreal Convention is very important for Turkey, not only the Black Sea security, but for the Caucasian security as well. And the fifth one is the energy issue. There's a big competition between Russia and the West, between Russian-supported new big projects, especially natural gas has concern, and European-supported new projects. I mean Southern Stream or newly Turkish Stream versus Southern Energy Corridor projects. They are on the way. Many countries are working on those issues, but these are different developments. They may affect the security environment in all those regions, and Turkey is at the heart of all those discussions. Russian-Armenian agreement, for example, to settle joint troops between those two countries is an issue for Turkey. Iskander missiles, okay, I'm just finishing my comment, and putting some troops, and we have Russian troops and air bases in Syria as well. Therefore, we have to think all those issues all together. In conclusion, I have to say that those new dynamics broaden security environment of Turkey, not only including the South Caucasus, but the Black Sea, Eastern Mediterranean, and the Middle East. They are all interlinked, and if we are facing with such a kind of broader security issues in all those areas, then we have some serious concerns, and we have to get together and discuss all those issues. We don't know. Of course, Turkey, the ambassador mentioned in the previous panel, Turkey is as a NATO member country. Turkey stick to its position, but how to respond all those new security challenges in front of Turkey is a serious issue, and now Turkey hopefully will get rid of all those domestic competition and issues and can turn to those issues in order to offer some constructive resolution. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Mr. Çelikpala. The issue is that Turkey's role in resolving conflict in the South Caucasus, whatever form, as a regional power, as an active member of the international community, as a member of the Atlantic Alliance, of course, should be variable and should be effective. But this is very easy to say about, but how to say realize such a hope of people here in this Caucasus. Definitely, Turkey has its limitations, has its, settings of interest, and therefore what we have heard now really deserves, thorough attention. But at the same time, I think we have all to think about how to utilize those limited resources of international involvement positively, influencing these very dire processes in the South Caucasus. Anyway, thank you very much. Now, let me move to Mr. Joshua Kuchera, the editor on Turkey and Caucasus of the Eurasia Net. We hope that your observations will shed additional light to what is going on in this part of the world.
Well, we'll see. Thank you to the organizers for inviting me.
And I would ask presenters also to pay attention to those questions. Maybe some of them will be addressed by you. So, please.
Thank you. As Ambassador Menarbarishvili correctly identified, these conflicts in the South Caucasus require a sophisticated approach. However, in the United States now, our president is Donald Trump. And he is not somebody who's known for his sophisticated approach. So I wanted to try to think a little bit about what this new dynamic what kind of impact that's going to have on these old conflicts. This was addressed a little bit in the first panel this morning, and as was correctly observed, not actually a lot has changed so far. Particularly if you look at the South Caucasus, it's pretty hard to discern any kind of movement in terms of U.S. policy towards the South Caucasus. Part of this is obviously just momentum. You know, the U.S. foreign policy is like a battleship. It's very hard to turn quickly. So even if Trump wanted to change the direction, it's hard to do, as was observed this morning. You know, there's a lot of institutions in the U.S. that put checks on a president. Secondly, there's not a lot of evidence that Trump is very interested in foreign policy. You could say he's not very interested in being president at all, but I think this is especially visible in the foreign policy realm. There's huge numbers of senior positions in the foreign policy and the national security bureaucracies that are unfilled. And also, as was discussed this morning, you know, some of the Trumpiest people in the foreign policy world, the Steve Bannons, the Mike Flynn's, the P.T. McFarlane's, are either out or have been pushed aside in favor of more kind of traditional foreign policy people. And what we have now looks kind of like a standard Republican foreign policy. And then thirdly, as much as it pains us in this room, the South Caucasus really is not a very important part of the world from Washington's perspective. There's a lot of things going on, and we're just a small part of it. And so even if Trump were very active in terms of foreign policy, in terms of changing foreign policy, the South Caucasus would be low on the priority list and would be one of the places where those changes were felt the least and the slowest. So what we have now is a sort of holding pattern for U.S. policy in this region. All the people, in the embassies and at the lower levels of the State Department and the military, I mean, they're, by all accounts, just kind of doing what they've been doing in the absence of clear direction from above. And so that's more or less, I think, how things are likely to stay. But what remains unclear is what happens if there is a crisis. And that's where things get very unpredictable. Especially, it's always unpredictable, but especially with this new White House. So what would happen if a serious crisis breaks out here that requires White House attention? And I agree with the organizers of the panel who said that the kind of the three major things we need to think about are renewed Russia-Georgia conflict, renewed Armenia-Azerbaijan conflict, and some kind of instability in the Black Sea, some kind of clash in the Black Sea. I think those three things are the things that we have to worry about the most. So how would a Donald Trump White House react to these things? So first, to step back a little bit, there's been a lot of discussion about what Trump's ideology is, what his doctrine is, what his principles are with respect to foreign policy. And it's speculation because we can only guess. He really, honestly, doesn't have very much of a foreign policy. And we kind of have to, when we think about this, we kind of have to leave the world of international relations and strategy and foreign policy and enter kind of the world of psychology and television and the world that kind of Trump operates in. In foreign policy, there's a kind of a common perception that Trump has changed his mind a lot over the last few years. And in domestic policy, I think that's definitely the case. But there's a very interesting new book that I feel like has not, I'm surprised it hasn't gotten more attention. It's by two scholars at Cambridge, one historian and one IR scholar. It's called Donald Trump, The Making of a Worldview. The authors are Brendan Sims and Charlie Lederman. And so what these two guys did is they went back and they analyzed all of Trump's public remarks since 1980. And he's been talking about foreign policy since then. And what they found is that he actually has an extremely consistent point of view on foreign policy, starting from the 1980s and up to today. And that his point of view is that other countries are constantly taking advantage of us because our leaders are weak and stupid. He was saying this about the trade deficit with Japan in the 1980s, and it's been, as time has gone on, it's been adapted to newer foes like Mexico and China. To quote Sims and Lederman, for Trump, almost every international problem that besets the United States is explained by the idiocy of its leaders. Now, I think it's too far to call that an ideology or a doctrine. It's something more like an emotional disorder, but it is a consistent point of view, and I think it is actually helpful in explaining what Trump is doing. I think in particular, it helps explain why he made this surprising decision to attack Syria, if it was 3 weeks ago. This went against everything that he promised to do, but he did it anyway. Now, there's probably a lot of reasons for this, but I think one significant one is that when something like this chemical weapons attack happens, there's this sort of American reflex to feel like we have to do something. We don't know what it is, but we have to do something. Americans, we kind of want to have it all. We don't want to get involved in these messy long conflicts, where our soldiers die, we spend a lot of money, but we also want to feel like the good guys in a movie. And Trump understands this psychology very well. So he probably understood that this was an opportunity for him to look strong and decisive and drop some bombs. And never mind that it annoyed Russia, never mind that it alienated a lot of his political base, these kind of America First nationalists. It made him look strong and decisive. and so he did it. So to return back to the South Caucasus and the Black Sea, what is there in this region that makes the U.S., that could make the U.S. look weak or stupid? Let's ask Donald Trump. June 20th, 2012, there was a G20 summit. Both Obama and Putin took part. Trump tweets, "Putin has no respect for our president. Really bad body language." This is the first time ever that Trump tweeted about Putin, and it's about how he disrespected Obama. Later that year in August, Putin just sent a Russian nuclear sub to the Gulf of Mexico. Barack Obama can't be bothered. August 2013, a sad day for America with Snowden being granted asylum in Russia. Putin is laughing at Obama. March 22nd, 2014, this is the day after Russia annexed Crimea. I believe Putin will continue to rebuild the Russian empire. He has zero respect for Obama or the US. A month later, America is at a great disadvantage. Putin is ex-KGB, Obama is a community organizer. Unfair. And this is really just a sample. There are dozens of tweets like this. All criticizing Obama in the face of what he sees as Putin's strength and decisiveness. And then the last time Trump has tweeted about Putin was on March 7th. For 8 years, Russia ran over President Obama, got stronger and stronger, picked off Crimea and added missiles. Weak! Exclamation point. So all this is frankly pretty childish, but it is a useful frame, I think, for what might happen here if a crisis were to break out. And so to go back to these original three scenarios, frankly, the most likely by far, I think, scenario for a crisis to break out here is renewal of fighting between Armenia and Azerbaijan. I think everyone here would probably agree with that. However, I think that's also the one where the US has the least reputationally at stake. There's no clear good guy or bad guy in this from an American perspective. Russia's involvement is indirect. And honestly, Trump is probably not that different from any other president in this respect, and that there's no good options for a US president in the case of a serious war between Armenia and Azerbaijan. So, probably what we could expect in that case is, as Zaur mentioned, not a very high level of involvement, but, diplomats trying to resolve it, but not much more than that. The more interesting and dangerous situation is if there's something that involves Russia. And that would be either some kind of flare-up between Georgia and Russia over Abkhazia and South Ossetia, which I think is pretty unlikely at this point. I think that those conflicts have kind of refrozen to an extent. But the one I think real danger spot is the Black Sea. And I think Shota was right to highlight that. The US and NATO have continued to ramp up the number of patrols, the number of joint exercises that they control in the sea, that they conduct in the sea. Russia is clearly annoyed by this. They feel threatened by it. They, as Shota outlined, have been doing their own militarization of the sea. They've been regularly buzzing, Russian warplanes have been regularly buzzing the American ships that take part in these exercises in the Black Sea. And so it's not too difficult to imagine that either some kind of accident happens and some either Russian or American soldier or seaman or airman is killed, or maybe Russia will decide at some point that it's in its self-interest to provoke a fight. Who knows for what reason. Now that the political climate in the U.S. Has become very anti-Russia over the past year, I would say. And so in the event of some kind of clash like this, the domestic pressure on Trump's going to be very high to not look weak and stupid. And that would be true of any president, not just one who's fixated on the issue of looking strong in front of Putin. And so this really is going to have very difficult to predict consequences. I mean, obviously there are restraints to how far you can go with Russia, nuclear weapons being an obvious one of them. But
Trump, how far is he going to go to not look like he's backing down and to look like a tough guy? And then on top of that, Russia probably knows this. Tbilisi probably knows this. Everyone in this region probably knows this. And so this is like a second order of calculation, like what are these people going to do? And so frankly, we're in uncharted waters. So I'll leave it at that.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Kuchera. Cannot insist that these words make me particularly happy, but what can we do? Yes, our task was to make the objective, realistic assessment of the things in this region, especially with regard to the conflict and so on and so on. I think what we have heard from these really high qualified experts proved another time that what we are facing with is a terribly difficult situation created with many contracting interests, players who have different, I would say, understanding of the reality, definitely different interests, and all these is developing in the also, I would say, negative, I would say, background. This is inability of the international community to deal with such problems more effectively than they do now. It's about absence of the tools sometimes, the absence of the political will in other cases, and so on and so on. But anyway, these conflicts should be resolved. Otherwise, the region has no prospect to develop and to really meet those the challenges we are facing now. So now we have to discuss this, how to do it, how to achieve this goal with the audience, and using those questions which are already on the screen. Please, about the conflicts and how to resolve them. Questions, maybe some comments. Are there any? Yes, please. Please present yourself.
Thank you very much. My name is Anna Maria Kish. I'm from Budapest, from Central European University. I'm a researcher there, and I want to address my question to Richard, if I may, but others may also answer how it's a bit long. Since you projected a more serious clash concerning Nagorno-Karabakh in the near future, I would like to ask, what do you think concerning lessons learned on the Russian and Turkish side? What can be the reaction of these two patron states if this clash will erupt? And I totally agree with Mr. Kuchera that it's quite anti-Russian atmosphere in the US as far as I heard. So that would be interesting to see what Trump's reaction may be here if you are willing to anyhow share your ideas. Thanks.
Thank you. Any other question? Please. That direction.
Hi, I'm David Batashvili. I'm with Civil Georgia News Service. I have a question in particular to Mr. Chelik Pala Giragosyan. In your opinion, if there is renewal of war in Nagorno-Karabakh, and this time not just for 4 days, but much more seriously and for a longer term, how would you assess the threat that Russia could use this in order to establish more complete geopolitical control over the South Caucasus? And it could be done through various kinds of schemes and moves, beginning from demands to Georgia to make military transit for Russia and escalating to various other possible steps. Thank you.
Thank you. Then? Is there a third one? No. Okay, let's start commenting these questions and then we'll continue, please.
Thank you very much for the question. In fact, I do say we all stand in support of you in terms of Central European University being under pronounced threat internally. In terms of Nagorno-Karabakh, I'm going to combine the questions. In the event of renewed hostilities, in many ways, Turkey is gravely concerned if Nakhichevan, the Azerbaijani exclave, is a theater of operations, given the security guarantee that Turkey has with Nakhichevan. I'm much more worried about Russia's reaction. And in fact, the real danger here is Russian exploitation or provocation of renewed hostilities in order to give them the greater insurance for power and leverage. Many around Putin, the crazy people, the angry birds advising Putin over Crimea policy and Donbass, are the ones saying that unlike Abkhazia and South Ossetia, there aren't Russian citizens to protect. There aren't Russian peacekeepers in Nagorno-Karabakh. And they are pushing for the possible deployment of a Russian peacekeeping force. What worries me is, on the one hand, the hope is that there's only one issue that Nagorno-Karabakh, Armenia, and Azerbaijan all agree upon. All three parties to the conflict are against Russian peacekeepers. Obviously, as we all know, there's no such thing as Russian peacekeepers. And once they're deployed, they never go home. But more importantly, for Georgia, I'm worried about Baku-Ceyhan, the oil pipeline being targeted in the event of renewed hostilities. The deployment and use of the, not just Scud missiles, but the Iskander missile system. Now, on the one hand, I'm a former instructor for the U.S. Army Special Forces. From a military perspective, it no longer makes sense for Azerbaijan to attack in the near future. But the problem is, Azerbaijan doesn't follow military logic. It's based on the diplomatic calendar and domestic political issues. This is the danger. The other problem is Russia is the only winner here. We are all losers, bottom line. And at the end of the day, as interesting, as sexy as geopolitics is, it's really more about local politics and economics when we're talking about national security and stability. And the endangered species of our region, statesmanship, where we don't have leaders with strategic vision governing the country. We have short-sighted, usually middle-aged men running the country or ruling the country on a day-to-day schedule. And this is where our real hope and investment is in demographic change. The new generation, half of the room. Georgia, Armenia, Azerbaijan have a shared past, a difficult present, but we forget we have a shared future as well.
Thank you. Any?
Yes, of course. Please,
Okay. Okay. Actually, I'm going to combine. I saw one more question here. Okay, if they will be similar, the question was the similar April, similar the war like the April, what will be impact to Russian role here, and also the second question I saw here, that what will be impact of the new war in Nagorno-Karabakh conflict dynamic. I think, let's say, from the military point of view, if, let's say, if you look at geographically to Nagorno-Karabakh, if purely military logic, if there will be a successful 2-day or 3-day of the, let's say, rapid blitzkrieg by Azerbaijan side with using all military capability, and we are not going to talk about what will be impact of that. So because it's the goal, you put a military goal, and if you receive or reach the military goal, that's the end, and then they start the diplomatic process. So that's why in April it was never been Azerbaijan's aim to liberate any territories, even the Agdam or Fuzuli, who is the powerfully occupied, which is very easy target for Azerbaijan to de-occupy in the current military logic. So, but other thing is that what will impact Russia? Okay, Richard answered about the Russian peacekeepers. So I agree that there is a gentleman agreement. There will be no Russian peacekeepers, but this logic has changed in the last 2 or 3 years. There will be Russian peacekeepers if there will be, let's say, final resolution of conflict, but peace quota, not more than 20 or 20%. So Russian peacekeepers will be on the auspice of the OIC or United Nations. So there will not be any pure Russian peacekeepers in the region. So that's I think, the changing logic here. And then, let's say, there's a one concern that we always concern that, according to the 1994 the ceasefire agreement, there is a provision says that deployment of the CIS peacekeepers to the region. Commonwealth of Independent States. So that's why it's some pretext for Russia to use in the future. But that's my concern. And then other two questions, if it's possible to answer. The impact of the Iskander missile to Nagorno-Karabakh conflict. The second question was that, okay, the question is the impact of the Iskander missiles. The Scud missiles, which has Azerbaijan Scud missiles, Armenia has Scud missiles, for example, range is 300 kilometers. If you would like to use the Scud missiles, and you can target out of the strategic objects in Azerbaijan, also in Armenia. So if you would like to do this, so the one difference is that between the Iskander missile and Scud is okay. There's a range is much more than 500 kilometers. It's a much more, let's say, decisive. It's a more impactful, but the logic is same. So if you are going to use the ballistic missile, so that's why in this sense I think it doesn't make different things that if you have a Iskander missile, if you have a, let's say, the Scud missile. So it depends on the position and the logic when you are going to use, in which situation you are going to use this. So, so that's why in my sense, okay, an impact to Azerbaijan is in order to acquire equally a powerful armament, Azerbaijan is looking to, especially defensive the weapons that will be to let's say to eliminate any concern coming from the Iskander missiles. But let's say the problem is that there is no combat layer, let's say proof that let's say military equipment against Iskander missiles. So there is not. So that's a question, and also it will cost a lot. So starting if you are going to get, let's say, very powerful anti-missiles, then it will cost more, up to the $2 billion US. So last question, there was an impact of the West. Has West changed its position on the Nagorno-Karabakh conflict? Actually, West hasn't changed its position. Just to look the last 4 years, the most powerful, most hopeful time was 2011 in June, when in Kazan meeting between Azerbaijan and Armenian presidents, which under Russian auspice. So then the second one, on the first and second, first under the Western auspice was in 2013 in November, and after year 2014 November again, October, November, by the president of the Holland, and the last one was in 2016 in May in Vienna. So in the last 4 years, there was only the 3 meetings that organized by the Western leaders, which is the US and France is the co-chairman. So the problem is that I think the Western leaders is happy to preserving the military and the diplomatic status quo. So that has been seen like this in Azerbaijan, especially when they introduced the investigation mechanism or some elements that to stopping any kind of skirmish between Azerbaijan and Armenia in the line of contact. That will be, they are satisfied with the stopping or the status quo for a longer years. So that's the very main and major concern for Azerbaijan, that if there will be any development in the diplomatic front, why we should wait and what we should wait. That's the question is asked and posed by Azerbaijanis.
Thank you.
Just a short point. When I would like to label Turkey as an actor or factor, in the Caucasus, but I never use this patron state in terms of Nagorno-Karabakh issue as a concern. Turkey is not a patron state in Nagorno-Karabakh issue. Of course, Turkey has a role and some effects in the resolution of the issue, but in a peaceful way. Being a patron state is something different. Therefore, I can easily say that Turkey never uses Nagorno-Karabakh issue as a leverage in the Caucasus to create a sort of power basis for itself. Instead, Turkey most probably support peaceful resolution. This is the reason why the president was very critical of Minsk Group and some Western partner countries in this issue. Therefore, I do not call the country as a patron state in Nagorno-Karabakh issue for the most of those issues in the Black Sea region and in the Caucasus. Turkey is refraining to provoke both regional actors and Russia in order to create any kind of development to escalate disagreements between those actors. You can check, for example, documents and summit documents as trilateral cooperation summit declarations as well, and agreements. You will see that Turkey is trying to open up all those channels, even including Armenia, to be part of all those cooperation mechanisms and schemes as a constructive actor in some conditions. Or you may comment on those Black Sea security projects, not only economic kind of initiatives, but as well as Black Sea Port, Black Sea Harmony, and other issues. Create a sort of literal cooperation. Of course, Turkey's capacity, we may discuss the capacity and the talent, but we need to prioritize Turkey's political and diplomatic leverage instead of stressing military capability and capacity on all those issues. And Turkey may contribute very positively in diplomatic level. This is the factor that makes Turkey as a constructive actor in all those issues. This is very important. We have to take the issue from this perspective. Of course, you may go to Turkish-Armenian rapprochement on some issues as well. There are some possibilities. I remember when the Prime Minister has changed in Turkey just before the coup d'etat, the new Prime Minister said that new Turkish foreign policy aims at increasing friends and decreasing the number of enemies. And in those days, there were some rumors, maybe Richard may comment on it, that it's a possibility to take some positive steps between Turkey and Armenia with Azerbaijani concept. If we manage to go back to those days or create a new future with this perspective, this may contribute to the resolution of all those issues. And the European Union may play a role, of course, and the other actors may play a role in the resolution of all those issues. But of course, this is not an easy and very quick job to do in the region by Turkey only. But another issue, military clashes, this is the last option and this is the last development that Turkey would like to see in the South Caucasus. You see the end result of what's happening in Syria and Iraq and in the Black Sea region. And Turkey is the most affected actor in all those developments or clashes. Then a new addition to those big and long list is a sort of nightmare scenario for Turkish diplomats, Turkish politicians, Turkish president, Turkish people, and all the people as well. Therefore, we need more constructive Turkey, and I don't think that Turkey acts as if it's a patron state in this resolution or the creating a sort of stress in the region.
Thank you. Please, we are approaching our final.
Thank you. Just one very short remark about the Georgia's position in terms of renewed hostilities between Armenia and Azerbaijan. Of course, Georgia doesn't have many leverages, and it's the weakest player in the region in this context. However, I think it is very important that Georgia tells its friends both in Baku and in Yerevan that Georgia doesn't see any potential positive outcome of the clash between the two, and therefore Georgia should explain to its friends that it should and will do everything in its power to prevent the potential full-scale war in the Caucasus and thus turning the Caucasus into a battlefield which can then easily be used by the third powers. I think it's important for the Georgian side to stress that.
Thank you.
I'll just make one small point about Turkey and Russia getting involved in the case of the Nagorno-Karabakh conflict. I agree that I don't think that either Turkey or Russia is very enthusiastic about getting involved in this conflict. And I think that Russia in particular will have to tread a very fine line because they certainly don't want to get military. There's nothing for them to gain in Karabakh. But there's a lot to lose in terms of Armenia as a treaty ally, and so if they don't stand up for Armenia, who are they going to stand up for? And so it reduces their credibility a lot. And so I think that in the the CSTO agreement, there's been discussion. I don't know if there's been discussion lately about what exactly triggers the collective security provision in that agreement, and whether it involves purely Karabakh or an attack on Armenia proper, and the calculations that Azerbaijan and Yerevan will make in that respect will probably determine whether or not Russia gets involved.
Thank you. Any other question or any comment? No?
Coffee break.
Okay. There is a strong demand. To move to the coffee break. Thank you very much, all participants. Many thanks to the audience. I hope we all now understand a little better what is going on around here in the South Caucasus, which I think should lay some portion of ground in the future perspective. Thank you. And now about logistics. Nothing, please.
Do you see?
Ja vím, no, jaká je většina.
za 400 na den. A tady přijdeš do Evropy tak já mám co myslím. Případně Akurat ja sobie mówię, że ta składka to jest tak wygląda, że możesz działać. Chodzi z tym kiedy jak ciężko sobie robić, a nie musimy z tego bez spadka, to by wam samo uczyć na stronę. Takže se asi v sobotu na mě já se podívám, jak to tam
já se podívám, já se podívám na nějaké náčveky, ale nebo jestli se kontaktuješ
a já jich budu stát jak jestli se může převedu setkat do Čes. A jestli by nám mohla dovolit ještě do nějakých na sobotu večer, na neděli a ráno. Na to zapomíne máme čas. Docela právě proto chceme si udělat krátký komentáře a nám si ty videa, jako co to za jak to vypadalo předtím, jak to vypadá teď, jak to nešáhneme do těch vlastních problémů. Spíš na to, jako, co se tam změnilo a proč. Případně jak se to tak ta jsme právě, já jsem se podíval do ale hlavně říkala, že si myslela na sebe, a jak máte svůj počínek, tak to asi ne. Ale já bych zase nedoporučoval. Takže musím ještě domluvit na takovou jestli teda mají, a taky byste se rozvážili. Tak já nebudu tak já tě napíšu, já si to vezmu na sebe, že si mě to zůstal.
So just the short one. What did you happen? Is there a chance of are there any signs of
Returning to this annual security conference in the South Caucasus, one of the major developments and issues of concern was the likelihood of renewed hostilities over the Caucasus. What we examined today on this panel was what are the chances of such renewed hostilities, and if and when it does occur, what will be the responses of major regional actors. Our conclusions were of great concern. There is little deterrence, and the likelihood of an escalation is already increasing, especially given the fact that it's a very convenient distraction. And in many ways, a repeat is likely of last April's heavy fighting.
Okay. That was close to one. Oh, it was good. Yeah, it was good.
Less so. In terms of, yes, we're a co-sponsor like you guys are, but I did the promotion more than that.
I should also talk to you about the
And I already met with the Georgia.
I just mentioned also. So we have the Azerbaijani partner, the research marriage passport, she is ready. She will be using the
On Monday, I'm going over the logistical requirements. Oh yeah. The good news is I have two welcoming lined up. EU ambassador. That's not 90%, it's 90%. If not, then it's going to be a journey. It's
turnout is already.
Great.
Yes. It was very interesting. It's hard to get. It's actually, it's hard to get. Yeah, because I was in Washington. Here in my care, our community is. It's very important. That's the best way to learn languages. No, I think I like Hello?
So you guys sitting in the audience, did you like it?
Yeah, it was really nice.
You are now
Allora, io sono stato finanziato in Italia, to jest 100 zł.
che sono stati di loro di Khania e con l'Irlanda. Si sta giocando lui sono
Poi non lo so, no?
Pau, aqui legal. A falar poxa.
You're moderating, guys.
Hello.
You want to help bring in the people, or you
I am part of the team.
okay? Let me go get some people first.
Okay. That's what the host should be doing. Organizing.
Moderatori together in another direction.
It had to change because I have my computer and I would like to keep it on the line.
So, Calvin, I'm a moderator. My name is Partha.
You know, because of the delay, I'm in a very difficult situation because I have to leave at 6.
So, shall I give you the floor first?
That will be also very good because there is somebody who can stay on if I am speaking for my friend.
So I'm in your hands. Who wants to be first?
Actually, you should.
I'm in your hands.
I ain't first. Okay. No, just a second. But you leave just a 6 o'clock.
No, it's
Only at 6 o'clock. Yeah, now it's 10 to 5. So it has no sense to change.
You are absolutely right.
It has no sense. Otherwise, I would have lost you.
Who's not doing that one? Yeah, of course. He can Yes.
Well, no, it's just it's for
version.
The Georgians are not need to drink it because they can drink it every day. Use every opportunity.
But I myself drink it almost every day. Yeah. I got addicted, which is not good.
because every evening you drink classic.
No, that is wrong. That is wrong. Well, he said it almost every morning I'm having a hangover, which is wrong. That's what he meant. So it's ridiculously good for him.
Yes, right.
It's yeah, that's really but telling you frankly, I quit being cold for almost 5 years. Yeah, well, sometimes it was okay, but I'm just joking.
I never.
But I'm really, it's a burden, but it has this character, it gets you when it's addicted, you know. I know people around who got addicted. But my point is that the German sort of has replaced it. Yes.
Facebook follow.
Ara?
Metro anche. Ara.
Shall we start? Hello?
Yes.
Good. Well, look, here we are. In front of you, yet another bunch of angry men. And those angry men will be talking about a particular topic of discussion of this session, which is dynamics within the Eastern Partnership test to the transformative power of the European Union. And indeed, we have today excellent panelists, and they are very well placed and well positioned, and with good expertise in that particular subject, which is the discussing the current state of affairs in different countries. So there are 6 countries of in the framework of the Eastern Partnership, of course, and these gentlemen will be talking about many different aspects of evolving partnership. But before I move to this particular subject of our discussion, let me say a few words about the European Union in general. I am myself not only a staunch Europeanist, but a staunch European Unionist at the same time. And to my mind, talks and assertions about disintegration and about the sudden death of the Union are largely exaggerated. Yes, it is true that there are serious threats, both external and internal. The EU faces, well, just to mention a few ones, problems with euro, slow economic growth, economic weaknesses in a number of countries in particular, like for instance Greece, Italy, even in France. Populist and anti-European parties across Europe are directly attacking the very existence of the Union, and indeed the most dramatic result of the anti-EU backlash so far is of course Brexit, where autocrats and even dictators, either internally or externally, migration and refugee crisis, and deal with Turkey, for instance, maybe for a part at any moment, and continued refusal, for instance, of several central European countries, of course, have sort of shaken the solidarity of the Union in that respect. And of course, last but not the least, and it was already discussed at the previous session, there is a troubling policy, to say the least, of the new American administration towards the EU, and as President Donald Tusk fairly recently put it, and I'm quoting, change in Washington puts the European Union in a difficult situation, with the new administration seeming to put into question the last 70 years of American foreign policy, end of quote. And this list, unfortunately, is longer. However, it is also true that the European Union is about, and has been much more about successes than about failures, including Eastern Partnership, on Eastern Partnership. And I believe that you should and will effectively digest and counter the threats it faces, and at the same time, I'm sure that we should not expect other exits in any time soon, if at all. And trust me, my words, that even President Trump eventually will become more enthusiastic of the European Union and more unionist. Now, perhaps a few words about the Eastern Partnership, which is a particular subject of our discussion. Dear panelists and dear members of the audience. Of course, we have to have a quick overview of the developments in that particular framework. In the year 2008, Poland and Sweden initiated a proposal to create the Eastern Partnership as a new format for cooperation with the EU's eastern neighbors, Armenia, Azerbaijan, Belarus, Georgia, Moldova, and Ukraine. And in May 2009, Eastern Partnership was launched as a strategic dimension of the European neighborhood policy. Well, I don't want to hijack much of the time, but of course I have to say that there has been or have been many turmoils, ups and downs in the framework of the Eastern Partnership. But you know, even without the perspective of the membership, the EU's Eastern neighborhood policy continues to deliver to a certain degree and to stir interest on the continent. More and more voices nowadays ask Brussels to review, and individual capitals, of course, to review the Eastern Partnership and consider perspective for the Eastern Partnership countries. Just very recently, it was in April, foreign ministers of the Visegrad Group just they agreed that Brussels Declaration, which is going to be in November this year, should reflect different aspirations of partner countries and offer a European perspective for the interested partners. Well, I find it truly encouraging. And of course, a few words now about the Eastern Partnership itself. Cooperation in the framework of the Eastern Partnership follow two parallel dimensions, so that is bilateral and multilateral. Of course, three countries, Georgia, Moldova, and Ukraine, they have successfully concluded association agreements and different free trade areas. Two countries, Georgia, Moldova, and Georgia, already have got the visa liberalization, and Ukraine is almost there. However, the EU faced significant setbacks with regard to signing association agreements with Armenia, Azerbaijan, and Belarus. But fairly recently, European Union and Armenia, they were able to conclude a new framework agreement. Negotiations are underway with Azerbaijan to conclude the new framework agreement with the European Union. Of course, the EU-Belarus relations have been, to say the least, even more complicated. But according to the EU's recent document, relations over the last 2 years have significantly improved between European Union and Belarus. And when it comes to the cooperation of Belarus in the framework of the Eastern Partnership, again, according to the EU, Belarus proactively participates in the Eastern Partnership. So it remains, of course, to be seen whether negotiations with Belarus on new framework agreements can be started anytime soon with the European Union. And last, and that is, of course, important from my side, after somewhat finalizing association or other more tailored agreements, the European Commission and European External Action Service have developed a joint working document, Eastern Partnership, focusing on key priorities and deliverables. And then that particular document has identified 20 deliverables for 2020 in 4 priority areas. I will skip mentioning those priority areas, so of course panelists will be able to talk rather in length about those priorities. But one thing I should mention from my side, that this particular document with its 20 deliverables is a kind of a guide for actions in the next phase of the Eastern Partnership until 2020. Now, of course, that was kind of an attempt from my side to set the tone for discussion. And further, perhaps I will just throw into the air a few questions. For instance, first from my side would be what one can expect, what we could expect from a summit in Brussels, which is going to be held in November. Perhaps another question from my side would be, can the association agreement and visa-free regime with the European Union incentivize the political transformation within the Eastern Partnership? Can the Eastern Partnership be instrumentalized for advancing membership perspectives, etc.? So now I will open the floor, and first, and I have to say that I'm in your hands, dear panelists, to say the least, and of course I'm in the hands of the audience, and I would rather give the floor first to Mr. Kakagugashvili, and of course, while giving the floor to each of the panelists, I have to also say a few words about them. Of course, Mr. Gugashvili is very much a specialist in that particular field, and he also represents the Rondelli Foundation. I will give you the floor now, dear Kaka, and perhaps after all interventions are done, then we'll collect the questions of your position. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Of course, this is inspiring that this partnership works. This, since 2007, when the proposal was ongoing, the preparation, and then 2008, when communication of the Commission was came to the to the destination and to the Council and the Parliament. 10 years passed almost, and this is very interesting that I noticed the 10-year term is something very special for European integration process elsewhere. First of all, it reminds me that since in 1993, Copenhagen European Council decided to grant status, candidate status to the Central and Eastern European states, and to offer them prospect of the membership. They started preparation for the membership of these countries, and around 10 years passed since then, when in 2003, in Greece, the agreement, the accession agreement was signed with 8 out of 10 countries, East, Central, and Eastern European countries. Another 10-year term, probably it's interesting also to observe, is a case with Western Balkans, when in 2000, Santa Maria de Feira European Council decided to give to Western Balkans also membership perspective, naming them potential candidates for EU membership on regional base. Decisions taken on regional base, as you see. And around 10 years on average, for all these countries, of course, the Western Balkan countries were very different with the level of their preparation, level of their development, ambition, etc. But in average, 10-year term was necessary to all of them from starting negotiating agreements on the association and stabilization agreements, of the stabilization and association agreements, before they became candidate states and started accession negotiations. Some of them, for example, the case of Croatia, who was the most successful case in this regards. In 2001, the agreement on the stabilization association agreement was signed, and status of potential candidate was attributed to Croatia. And in 2011, Croatia signed the agreement on accession of the European Union. So it was 10 years exactly. But in other cases, we have different other terms. But still, this is something very special, this 10 years case. I'm talking about this especially because of comparing this to other European integration process. To my view, at this moment, the European Union demonstrated three types of engagement on regional basis. And all these engagements are usually on regional basis. European Union in very non-common cases deals with individual countries. For example, with Turkey, it was individual decision that Turkey will become a member of the European Union, and starting negotiations on accession with Turkey. Also, on individual basis, but still, Turkey was considered as a country representing the southeastern European region, wider region, including Balkans. This is southern Eastern Europe. So we can say that its still approach was on regional basis. And the European Union engages in three types of engagements I see. One is, of course, the deeper engagement, which is about accession perspective. Second is about, of course, association and potential candidates type engagement, where countries become potential candidates and work for 10 years or more in order to prove that they can become candidate countries. This is a moderate engagement, I would say, and of course a weaker engagement, but still engagement of the European Union, like to create partnerships. For example, this kind of engagement, of course, the nomination is symbolic. It will call you moderate or active engagement or deep engagement, etc. There are three levels of engagements. I think that the engagement in first two engagement, of course, they consider final goal membership of the union, and the third one never considers membership. It is about rapprochement, about modernization, about soft influence, and then transformation of countries, Europeanization wider, and practically bringing countries closer and creating this area of stability, prosperity, and peace around the European Union. This is about certain type of engagement. I can say that Eastern Partnership was not exactly created for everybody knows it, but still I can repeat because I have special thoughts about this. It was not created in order to provide membership perspective to the countries, members of Eastern Partnership. But it was, I can say that it was a natural process of approximation of these six countries, or these six countries becoming closer to a deeper EU engagement process. Even maybe even unconsciously, but we can observe the situation that European Union in 1993 also, 1992 even, decided to develop partnership and cooperation agreements with former Soviet Union republics. It was very special agreement, not having ambition of free trade, not having ambition of cooperation and defense and security issues. At least cooperation was only in terms of defining closer positions, not convergence of positions, and so on. It was about transformation these states and helping to internationalize these states, helping them in state buildings, etc. There was no at all talking about some other approach with this European Union. But in 2003, when neighborhood policy was created, the six former Soviet Union countries situated in the Eastern Europe, they became officially European neighbors, and they became part of a bigger process. And this process was very similar by technicality to the enlargement process. Even about that time, enlargement DG and DG working for RELEX, or external relations, they joined, and neighborhood and enlargement issues became under one umbrella. So, and one type of approach is progress reports and action plans were similar to accession partnerships. They were introduced, and the same stuff started working. So I want to say here that Even starting from neighborhood policy, there were seeds of future deeper engagement of European Union, which leads to their eventual membership of countries to the Union. Then Eastern Partnership. Eastern Partnership was just extracted from this neighborhood policy. Even being part of neighborhood policy, in reality, this is something else. This is for closer engagement and development of association agreements, which became bilateral tools already. Now we can pose a question. Of course, association agreements are bilateral tools and they don't prepare for membership countries, but they practically prepare countries to fulfill Copenhagen criteria, which is necessary for membership. So when you implement association agreement, you become practically involved in the EU internal market, you become closer or very close partner in foreign and security policy, you become integrated with EU on sectoral base, so functionally integrated with EU. What else is necessary to have? The else is the EU's ambition to absorb these countries as members of the European Union. I think that this was not, of course, announced, and this is not put in EU's plans at this moment. But imagine that the Eastern Partnership countries, area of the Eastern Partnership was, of course, chosen in order to develop it, to Europeanize towards creating conditions for future membership. Now we came to the very, very important topic. So we can say that Eastern Partnership is fully, including association agreement, is fully able to prepare a country for membership. But what is necessary in order that, for example, Georgia or any other country of Eastern Partnership really become candidate countries for the European Union? I think that the process of enlargement of the European Union proves that enlargement comes only on regional basis. No individual country, Georgia or Armenia or any country else, without EU's regional ambition can claim becoming member of the European Union. For example, today, lots of experts that I respect very much their opinion, they push for Georgian government making application for EU membership. To my view, this is absolutely has no ground for the moment because EU never demonstrated its ambition towards this region. What is necessary now to do for Georgia? Of course, Georgia wants aspires to become member of the European Union, but how it could be achieved? Of course, one thing is that functional integration is absolutely necessary. If you are not functionally integrated with EU, if you are not Europeanized, you are not fulfilling Copenhagen criteria, or you are not coming close to this point, you have no prospect of being recognized as a candidate country. But from other side, is it sufficient? No, this is not sufficient. There is need that EU has a regional ambition towards this region. So Georgia should be considered as a part of a region which EU views as an area of its future enlargement. Otherwise, it's never happened. I already said that it was with Central and Eastern European countries, it was case with the Western Balkans. Imagine that in Western Balkans, there are a group of countries, some countries, which would have never been accepted to become potential candidates if not EU's regional ambition. Of course, some countries like Croatia, Montenegro, they deserve why they are easier for them it's easier to go on the functional integration way and deserve the membership of European Union. But what about Kosovo, for example, or Bosnia? They are not absolutely ready. And Albania, let's see how long it negotiates. So it got perspective, but it cannot start negotiations on accession with European Union because it's not ready. So I think that there was EU's regional ambition. How now we imagine that the EU has regional ambition towards Eastern Partnership region? While Georgia or Ukraine or Moldova, who have very high ambition and very high expectations about membership in the European Union, before they form part of this Eastern Partnership region, and in the same time, several countries of the Eastern Partnership, they absolutely have no aspiration for membership of the European Union, then naturally they will not be any serious ambition from side EU to expand towards this region. So what is necessary? There is necessary that those countries, three newly associated countries, create a special group of countries which can be considered as a separate region from this Eastern Partnership. So what could be this region? I think that this is Black Sea. So the next enlargement of the European Union should go towards the deeper to the Black Sea area and then encompass involving Ukraine, Moldova, and then Georgia. And of course, Eastern Partnership can stay as a very, very good and very efficient forum for cooperation of all 6 countries of the Eastern Europe. But we need a special other regional grouping in order to prove that there is possibility for European Union to enlarge somewhere. There is space for European Union enlargement. And then Georgia can demonstrate and even make application for European membership. I'm very sorry, I'm finishing. Just saying that how it is possible to do, I think that it is possible absolutely within the Eastern Partnership just to create for the beginning a panel 3+1, 1 is European Union and 3 are Moldova, Ukraine and Georgia, a group of countries which develop their multilateral policies with you, because bilateral policy is a simple thing, association agreement that you pursue this bilateral policy with you. But here, this kind of approach has prospect and even has documentary or official support from EU's policies. For example, in 2000, I will just in 2 minutes. For example, in 2003, when first the communication on establishment of neighborhood policy appeared, there was such a phrase mentioned that these countries can create, so Eastern Partnership countries, can create with European Union a kind of economic cooperation format resembling European Economic Area. You know what is the European Economic Area? This is practically integrated with the EU, 3 countries, Norway, Iceland, and Liechtenstein, which form part of the EU's internal market and practically are fully integrated. So imagine that from EU side there already was such a message that these countries can create with European Union this kind of area. While all 6 countries cannot do it, there are several other documents. In 2007, European Parliament resolution. In 2011, another thing talking about neighborhood economic community. So many things about this. But of course, if all 6 countries cannot create such ambitious framework with European Union and such trade arrangement, 3 countries which already signed and have DCFTAs with European Union, they are fully able, and it would be very logical if they create with European Union something resembling European Economic Area. So the regional context will start with this. European Union will start considering these 3 countries as a separate region where enlargement could happen. Thank you very much. This was my consideration.
Many thanks to you. Although I myself I have identified a number of different things which can be debated, and thank you for that, of course. One important thing what I detected is the following. Of course, I suppose you all know Adel song, this is the end. And what we learned is that Eastern Partnership is not an end. So there is a way beyond this.
Absolutely.
Partnership for those countries who have been participating in the Eastern Partnership. Let me turn now to Kalman Michel. Of course, he brings not only the national, let me say, perspective, but he brings the vast experience and EU perspective. Of course, you are the former EU special representative to Moldova. You also negotiated over the Transnistrian, unfortunately, the frozen conflict. And of course, you are the head of the mission for the European Union Advisory Mission on Civilian Security Sector Reform in Ukraine. And currently, you are a researcher, sir, at the Central European University. So perhaps if I humbly may ask you to be, apart from what you are going to discuss, of course, under this particular subject, to be somewhat more specific about what one can expect from this particular summit, which is forthcoming on Eastern Partnership in Brussels in November, and what is the perspective for that particular and very important document with its 20 deliverables? Thank you, and floor is yours.
Thank you very much, and greetings for all of you who have been brave enough to sit through this whole day's very rich conversation. I will take the things to somewhere else than so far. It has been mainly about the external diplomatic issues, but I really would like to look at the countries themselves also, because you know the European Union is fundamentally, it is changing, but fundamentally at its core is a rule of law community. It's a community of good governance in Europe. It's also a geographic community, but it does have this very strong commonality of the countries, and where there is problem with these issues, then there is a problem with the European Union as well. So I think that it's a useful way to start the conversation, because I mean, if you think about it, Moldova, Ukraine, and Georgia, they are all newly born or reborn states after either never having been states, particularly Moldova and Ukraine, and after a very long hiatus, as in the case of this fantastically of Georgia, with an incredible cultural and national heritage, but still with a very, very long hiatus in its statehood. So I'm borrowing the characterization from a Canadian scholar of Ukrainian origin, Taras Kuzil, who says that these countries, then, when they were born in 1991, they actually had a quadruple challenge, creating nationhood. In the case of Georgia, it was not an issue, but just imagine Moldova with a hugely contested national identity, as Jon would certainly testify. Or Ukraine, with also a lot of questions of what it is that is called the Ukrainian nation. So there was a nation-building challenge, there was a state-building challenge, there was a challenge to create a market economy and democracy. And it's really important to remind the basics at the beginning of my talk, because it's really, most of the Europeans, I have to say, with whom I dealt with in my work, they don't really understand what a formidable challenge it is to meet all these four challenges successfully, and how patient we all have to be with these countries. But at the same time, you know, over these 25 years that have evolved, we got a new challenge, and that is the external challenge, of course, by Russia, which wants to prevent these countries of meeting all of these challenges. They question the nationhood of whomever they can. Georgia is too unpalatable to do, but for Ukraine, certainly they question famously Ukraine's nationhood. They also question Moldova's identity, complex identities. They simplify into something what it is not. They certainly are undermining statehood as much as possible, and the model that Russia is exporting, which is an oligarchic, corrupt model, is of course in direct conflict with both a market economy, as we like it, and with democracy. So it's really just a formidable challenge. And I also want to say at the outset that if we ask ourselves, step back and ask ourselves, how many people in the European Union apparatus, be it the Parliament, be it the Commission, be it the Council, actually can appreciate the complexity of these challenges, and also to have an intelligent view on what are the most important change mechanisms for these countries. It's actually a very, very few of them. So this is at the outset. Now, I am talking now in a country which actually has gone through one of the most formidable reforms that we know in the post-communist region, obviously. So it's actually very interesting to really think also about it, what is applicable and how from the Georgian reforms to the others in the Eastern Partnership. And while I agree with Kaka completely that the three countries stand out as the sort of the coalition of the willing who firmly want to join the European Union, I also hope that others will also follow it and certainly I wouldn't be too surprised if Belarus caught up much faster than we at the moment can foresee. So, so the Georgian reforms are really extremely important for the whole region. Out of this this problem that we in Europe don't really understand how reform happens in the region, come a lot of things. One is that member states would typically extrapolate their issues to the region. But of course, the region is in a different developmental stage than let's say Sweden or some of the most developed human rights places in the Union. So again, there is this thing of what is the sequence of the reforms and how to be patient and where not to be patient. I would speak a little bit maybe, okay, the organizers left us with a very intelligent set of questions. I would like to honor those and say that in each of the three countries there are indeed challenges. And the common denominator, although in very different ways, is, let's name the elephant in the China shop, is a certain oligarchic distortion of democracy. So in each of the three countries, in very different manners and to very different extent, but you have that. And perhaps the most powerful way to see it is when we look at Ukraine. Ukraine had two revolutions with 10 years apart. And both revolutions, if you think about it, were to address this oligarchic, or some others would call it the patronal stage, some others mafia state. Both revolutions try to address the, I should say, the dignity deficit in Ukraine. Basically, a parasitic state that had been built up mostly in the Kuchma period, and I am not blaming anybody, but just historically. The logic of the system became so entrenched and so strong that even the energy of these revolutions was not able to change it. And what we see now in Ukraine is actually a waste again, yet another revolution. And I was for very long was quite reluctant to say this publicly, but we are now 3 years into into the new period, and And what we can see is that there are certain changes, but the fundamentals of the system have not changed. And now is the time for me to really to address what are those fundamentals. And you know, there have been changes. The macroeconomic policy is very prudent. The central bank did a great job in consolidating the banking system. Also, there is much less theft from gas imports than in the previous periods. But the fundamental organization of the state that is so prone to organized corruption, that is the key. And I have been trying to be as benign in the way I express it as possible. The fundamental organized nature of corruption has not been changed. And you know, my mission, the European Union Advisory Mission that I established and was leading for 1.5 years, of course, was about addressing many of these issues. And here, of course, again, being in Georgia, the interesting thing is that the most enthusiastic reformers that I had the fortune to work with were those Georgians who were exported at the time to Ukraine. They were the ones who really took seriously, and Ekas Guladze, and David Sakvarilidze, were the people who, and a few others, who really took very seriously the reforms. Whether the Georgian reform expense was 100% applicable to Ukraine, I will put aside, and I will not have time to address, but certainly there is a very strong link between Georgia and Ukraine here. But the presidential administration has been successful in making the critical reforms not to happen. The prosecutorial system is about the same as it used to be, which is what? A huge organized corruption mechanism, very powerful, and also used for political purposes to neutralize political opposition. It is very large, very badly paid people. Why is it important? Georgia, again, is a good instructive example of why it is important to pay people well, because then you can afford not to be corrupt. In a country where a normal prosecutor earns $100, as it is in the case in Ukraine, the system deliberately forces them to remain corrupt because they can't sustain themselves and their families. So that is very critical, and also there are cosmetic changes in the judiciary, but certainly no breakthrough change, and the changes are slow enough for the ruling elite to adapt to them. So and that is really important. Moldova, we had a big opportunity, of course, after the 2009 conflicting political events. There was a coalition that came to power, and it had the banner of European integration. So we have the coalition for European integration. But I have to say that the European Union has not used its muscles in this situation enough. I was very strongly in favor of very strict conditionality. So both this knowledge gap in the EU of what was to be done, and again, a very similar structure, so very similar things, but in a smaller country, much smaller country than Ukraine. We could have really had a concentrated effort towards establishing the rule of law. And we didn't do it. We were soft, and we let ourselves misled by nice words but less action. And what you have there now is it's not a hopeless situation, but we have a situation of one unelected oligarch really basically controlling the country. And by now, the European Union has learned the lesson to be much more specific about its expectations. So hopefully it will, over time, result in positive change in Moldova. What is quite reinforcing that both in Moldova and Georgia, besides these deficits that I mentioned, you have very capable managers in government in a very politically very similar fashion as well. And we heard the Prime Minister here, who is truly impressive and very eloquent. So that is really, dear friends, the big challenge. Now, there was mentioning of the deep and comprehensive free trade agreement. And here is my question. I don't have an answer, full answer, but I think that this is the way to approach it. The big problem of the European Union is that since it is a rule of law space, we assume that laws equal reality. And if there is a law, reality will follow the law. But it's not the case, of course, in countries that are not rule of law countries. So again, the European Union is not yet smart enough to figure out how to enforce change of reality rather than just demanding laws. So my big question about the DCFTA, which I think is a very interesting and potentially useful vehicle, and certainly free access of Moldovan, Ukrainian, and Georgian goods in Europe is an absolute must, and it's good that it has happened. Visa-free is also an absolute must, and it's good that it has happened. But whether this deep and comprehensive component of the free trade agreement will enforce real change, as Kaha said, that if we fulfill it, we will be ready for European Union membership. It's to be seen. Maybe it's more in Georgia and less in a country like Ukraine, which is very innovative in going around the legal regulations. But DCFT is certainly something to very closely watch, and hopefully it will be a real change agent. Now, of course, this is what I will have to finish it with, and I will have to apologize, but I'm actually going to the Bendokidze University for a speech, keynote speech at 6:30, so at 6 I have to leave from here. But what I want to finish it with is again, Ukraine, that is so dear to my heart, and I have to say that the reform momentum of 2004 has been by and large missed. Now the president very visibly is focused on his re-election, and then the old logic is really fully in motion. Yesterday, I heard a speech of Sergei Leshchenko, incidentally, in a show that Saakashvili is running on television, where he basically revealed documents by which Mr. Medvedchuk, who is Putin's major agent in Ukraine, has been held by the security services and hand in hand with the Russians to again create an import, not monopoly, but a disadvantaged situation for the other competitors in the liquefied gas market. So this is the logic in which Ukraine still operates, and that is a regrettable thing. But and there I again go back to what I said at the beginning. We have to be impatient in demanding change, but patient in expecting change. And of course, Ukraine's road towards building an efficient liberal state is a long road, and we just have to hope that the loss of reform momentum after 2014 will not be too expensive in terms of state. Thank you very much.
Kalman, thank you so much for this extensive coverage develops its role, but particular countries, you mentioned Ukraine, Moldova, as well as Georgia. And of course, let us remind ourselves that back in 2009, the EU and 6 countries of the Eastern Partnership, they have agreed that the Eastern Partnership will be based on commitment to the principles of international law and to fundamental values, including democracy, the rule of law you mentioned, and the respect for human rights and fundamental freedoms, as well as the market economy, sustainable development, and good governance. Of course, we are not yet there. There have been many shortcomings, problems. Kalman was saying about challenges and threats in terms of, as you said, oligarchic distortion of democracy. Well, I may have a clue whom we are talking when it comes to Georgia as well as Moldova, but could I ask you please whom you meant when it comes to Ukraine? The current president, if I can be blunt, or anybody else?
If it was a one-word answer, yes, but I have to footnote it in the following way. Ukraine is an interesting situation. It's a large country and it has a pluralism of many oligarchs, and when one tries to grow above the others, there is a capacity to throw them out, and it happened with Yanukovych most spectacularly. Poroshenko is doing it more skillfully, less greedily, and more subtly. But if you see the situation of Akhmetov, if you see the situation of the Dnipropetrovsk oligarch, Kolomoisky, and of course a few others were already crowded out with, by Yanukovych's extremely efficient Donetsk teamwork, so to say. You know, it's.
Okay, thank you. Yeah. Thank you. That's it turned out to Gennady English. Maksak, who is the head of the Foreign Policy Council, Ukrainian Prism, and of course, here I also should mention that he's also a member of Ukrainian National Platform of the Eastern Partnership Civil Society. Yeah, indeed. And that indeed makes him, what I said before, well placed to further discussing this particular subject, and perhaps sort of an additional input, what we just listened, is where we are in terms of making reforms. And another question, the fundamental question from my side would be, yes, indeed, some reforms indeed have taken place, including in Ukraine. And of course, there is a much more painful, say, path of reforms Ukraine should be undertaking. And whatever reforms has been taken already, are those reforms, can we assume that reforms, whatever we have had, either in Georgia or in Moldova or in Ukraine, can they be regarded as irreversible? And where the role of European Union and the partnership in particular can be seen in respect. Well, floor is yours, and we would be grateful if you could cover these important issues.
Your Excellency, thank you very much for this great introduction. Just to traditionally extend my thanks to the organizers, the Foundation and Stratpol for inviting me and for your partners. Actually, my pleasure is also that out of 3 are representing civil society for Eastern Partnership, so we're dealing with this on a daily basis. And actually, just before answering 2 questions, Your Excellency, I would like maybe to disagree on the core issue of Mr. Mujet, that the momentum is lost. The process is not that easy, and I could agree and comment on some of the difficulties what I mentioned, but I see quite maybe through different lenses, maybe through a distance, and from the distance from different countries, it seems from different angle, but I'll try to put it in my introduction. With your permission, I'll divide it into two parts. Ukrainian case will be the first, and then about in partnership and expectations that you put it in your introduction. So basically, if we're talking about Ukrainian case, we should admit several tracks which are very important, vitally important for Ukraine. Of course, this association agreement. The second track is visa liberalization process, which is, we hoping, on the final stage of the negotiating. And the next stage is very important for us. It's the sanctions process from EU against Russia. And we see it as a crucial point for our independence, and it really influences our position in our sovereignty to some extent. And of course, financial support and support for reforms, which is also vital for Ukraine, because it's not easy to do the same stuff when you are at war and when you are just in normal neutral position. So basically, what we have at political engagement since 2014, I think the situation changed drastically. And within political engagement, I could say that we see that there is a kind of unity between political elites in Ukraine. Although we know about different positions of oligarchs, but those who representing Ukrainians on parliamentary level, if you happen to see their political programs in early elections 2014-2015, they have all clause about European integration, about association agreement implementation. So basically, that formed the coalition agreement, where it was in preamble that we strive to implement fully the association agreement. So it is vital for us. What was on the negative side of political engagement, maybe this kind of competition for these low-hanging fruits, because European integration was something that united Ukraine of different regions, because it is good what Mr. Bouget, Ukraine is quite big in different regions with different mindsets and some ideas towards foreign policy with different regions. But European integration was the core issue uniting people. So basically, it was very good, and there was competition between presidential administration and between the government of Yatsenyuk, who is the leader in the process of reforms in terms of European integration. And basically, it postponed, unfortunately, the momentum of creation of the vice president's post for European integration. The next point, which is very important, the institutional capacity, which was just enhanced during these 3 years. The first idea, as was mentioned, the post of Vice Prime Minister on European Atlantic integration was launched. And Ivana Konstantin, the quite famous member of parliament, just occupied this place, and she's doing fine on this position, just giving political leverage to the process. The second idea, which is very important, the level of deputy ministers was established specifically for European integration and for implementing quite specific technical issues of association agreement. It was also a good thing on the plus side. And yes, of course, we could say about association agreement and implementation plan for 3 years as Bible of reforms. All the reforms that were put in different documents before that, in 2005, in 2006, 2007, they were there as reforms, as a description, but no delivery, no deliveries in that. And I think that this implementation plan shows the real roadmap how we want to see that. And then here I come to what Kamal Vijay said. Actually, I just encourage you to visit the website of National Council for Reforms in Ukraine. And you see there is a matrix of 20 plus reforms that are going at the same time in Ukraine with a different speed and different process, shortcomings and achievements. So basically, my idea is let's not measure Ukraine with one reform which is the difficult one at the moment, for example. If you happen to see the results of last year, the Association Council, there was a conclusion of the European Commission about achievements of Ukraine on the path of reform. So basically, when you have war, and when you're just dealing with 20 reforms at the same time, just be patient, because it's not overnight to change the country. And if, as far as the assistance of European Union, we have also a strategy of public administration reform. We did well with our Georgian colleagues, the reform of law enforcement agencies. So basically, some achievements are there, so we should see it just in a holistic picture, not just pick and choose some ideas, which I think quite important. But the problem of anti-corruption is still there in Ukraine, and we understand it's a very difficult, it's a mountain climb. But we are trying to achieve some results, and those institutions that took pains to create in Ukraine are already there. National Bureau for Anti-Corruption and other institutions, they do it, and maybe not in the way we want it just ideally, but they're trying to gain a positive track of their activity. And what we see as expectations from Ukrainian side. So basically, we need support of European Union, and it goes without saying that we need it in forms of sanctions against Russia, because we see it as the only good and effective way just to influence the Russia's position in the region. If we're trying to lose the situation, I think it will be much more difficult to achieve something tangible. I realize it's not that easy at the moment, but still it is the stage which is official. We see that somehow we should overcome this absurd, for my understanding, situation with this ratification of association agreement with Ukraine in Ukraine. You might know about this Dutch referendum on association agreement between Ukraine and EU and different inner discussions, but it is at stake of Ukraine, to the prejudice of Ukraine. So basically, we see that Ukraine should be a victim of some inner procedures which are manipulated to some extent. And at the moment, we're still waiting for ratification of the association agreement. Of course, we want a visa-free regime already launched, because there are some preconditions we've already completed from our Ukrainian side, and still the ball is on the side of EU. And hopefully, we will have it just in the first half of the year. What comes to Eastern Partnership, if I could just extend on the document you mentioned, there are 4 major priorities, and they are built on the Riga Summit Declaration. But what we see, it's about region. Kaka already put it quite clearly. We don't see Eastern Partnership as a region, we see bilateral. And when we have bilateral trade, it's okay because we have some agreements, some achievements, but when it comes to multilateral trade, it's a failure, I would say. Maybe the situation could change with the documents and its implementation of the joint staff document. But what we really should launch, maybe the feasibility study about the possibility of this common economic area, of those countries which form this AA club, association agreement clubs. So basically, this region should be as region, not as just doing bilateral. What is more important to gain more political significance to the Eastern Partnership? It's not a secret that at the moment the interest is weakening to the Eastern Partnership. And we quite quickly see the initiative of Visegrad 4 countries, and recently there was a summit in Warsaw, Visegrad 4 countries plus Eastern Partnership countries, and the recommendations they had at the end, they want European perspective to be part of this new declaration of Brussels Eastern Partnership Summit. I think it's a good thing even to advocate. If it is not a success, because of the different attitudes of different countries, I think that there is political leadership behind it. It's already a good sign for us. What I see, we should stress as Eastern partners security as a priority. As you see the document which was launched, which was completed in 2015, like a revision of Eastern Partnership, you will see some preconditions about security. But in 12 pages, it will be something on page number 8, and maybe two pages with vague formulations. The idea to make it political priority. And the instrumental way to achieve this, I think it could be, we discussed it on our forum, to create a kind of thematic intergovernmental platform on security, to discuss the issues that bother most of our country. I think to gain the political traction is possible in that way. And of course, there was a question what we can do what we can give to European countries. I think the stronger union and our participation in that would be part of it. For example, recently as well, there was a center created in Finland about counteraction of hybrid threats. It was a common initiative of NATO and European Union. I think that such kind of initiatives could be part of common endeavor from our side, because we can practice on the ground how to deal with it. And maybe to some extent we could just propose some counteractions which would be more efficient than just contemplating it from the other side. And just to conclude, I would like to reiterate that it is quite impossible to change overnight from bad guy to good guy, but I think we're still in process, and we see some good tracks, some good record in that. But as a civil society, maybe with that kind of that precondition to monitor that and just to deliver on something as well. Just to give you a flavor, maybe two weeks ago we declared a Ukrainian national platform. Our concern about the amendments of anti-corruption law when NGOs dealing with anti-corruption activity were forced to declare their incomes. So basically, we see a kind of pressure on the civil society sector. So basically, we put it on the agenda. So I think we can hope for Eastern Partnership to be as a region, not only as a bilateral track. Thank you.
Thanks very much indeed for concrete overview as well as concrete recommendations. How to make Eastern Partnership better, how to make the processes of approximation and eventual membership, more dynamic. And thank you, of course, for that. And of course, I fully agree when you say that it's damn difficult, on the one hand, pursuing a painful path of reforms, and on the other hand, fighting against Russians, of course. But on the other hand, of course, to my mind, there also should be constant efforts to create a proper check system of the government, not to misuse, of course, this particular argument and, sort of slow down the pace of reforms. With this, let me turn now to Dion Manole, who is Executive Director at Promolex Association, very much a prominent human rights organization in Moldova, and Dion is also a member of the steering committee of the Eastern Partnership Civil Society Forum and the country facilitator of the Moldova's National Platform for the Eastern Partnership Civil Society Forum. Dion, floor is yours. And apart from sort of having the disadvantage of being the last panelist, on the other hand, you have an advantage, to summarize as well whatever, to try to summarize whatever has been said so far, and of course to give your point of view on the particular subjects and topics we have been discussing tonight. Thank you, and the floor is yours.
Thank you. First of all, I would like to congratulate organizers for this event and for topics which we discuss here. It's my pleasure to speak about my experience and the experience of my country in the Eastern Partnership format. Because I come in from a human rights area, probably I will have a little bit different vision and opinion about security and the problems which we discussed here, including the challenges on the Eastern Partnership level. First of all, because the Eastern Partnership is promoting the EU values, which is mean good governance, democracy, human rights, rule of law. In our countries, we observe a lot of resistance from different groups which are not happy with these reforms, which are not happy with these changes. And they will do all the best to postpone at least or to block these reforms in our countries. And Moldova is a very good example in this. There are many forces in our countries, in Moldova first of all, which are very interested to keep far us, our countries and our societies from changes in our societies and in our countries. They will try to play as much as possible and to simulate the reforms and to manipulate society just to keep control and under the control of our countries and societies. About Eastern Partnership, of course, everybody understands that all 6 countries are very different. And we have more differences than similarities. And at least from these perspectives, it is very good, and we should congratulate and to say thank you to you for supporting this idea and this difficult project. Yes, I will say that this mission to support, democracy in our countries is not easy one, especially in this time and especially in our region, to achieve visible and quick results in the democratization of our countries, even we face with a lot of challenges in this process. It's not easy, but also is not impossible, I will say. All that we need is to learn from the experience in the last years, and also we need strong political willing. The security community should insist on EU level to not give up. And what I observe here, we will do this. Moldova, for example, was a bigger beneficiary of Eastern Partnership project. But now, according to the last surveys, only about 1/3 from population continue to support European way of the development of country, decreasing from 2/3 in 2009. So my country in a short period became, from a success story, became a serious problem. And now face with the most serious problems in the justice sector, in the economy sector, with demographic crisis and serious corruption. The society continues again to be divided by political forces. So Moldova now is not only territorially divided, which is a very strong signal for neighbors, first of all, because we cannot speak about the security in the divided country with divided society. And we need to act now. If we will not understand these details, next will be ours. This is why very important to continue and to adapt, but not to give up. In the Eastern Partnership region, we need to continue and to insist on democratic reforms. Without real rule of law and without vibrant civil society, no perspectives for development of the country and for human security. This is the way to instability and the conflicts. EU today faces with a lot of problems, migrants, Brexit, etc. But the security and peace on the eastern borders are too important to be ignored. So the role of the EU is very clear in our region, to promote the international law, the prevention of the conflicts, and to manage the crisis. All these three definitions are interconnected and, in the same time, interdependent. We will never be able to build security state and societies without respect for human rights and rule of law. Also, it's practically impossible to prevent the conflicts if we are not able to solve existing conflicts during a long period, and certainly in these conditions it's very difficult to manage the crisis efficiently. So I come from a country which was divided from the beginning. We failed in Moldova to solve Transnistrian conflict, Transnistrian problem, I will say. And now it seems that Moldova can be Transnistrianized. But we failed not because this problem was impossible to solve. We failed because the international rules and institutions are very weak. This is why, as a lawyer, and for security reasons, and to avoid the repetition of the history, I will say that now it's time to ask for the changes and reforms of the international institutions and mechanisms. The voice of international institutions should be more vocal, and they should participate in the prevention and stopping of the violences, applying the efficient sanctions against the states or regimes which violate international law and procedures. The efficiency of international organizations can prevent the conflicts. All military interventions and foreign military presence, like in Moldova or Georgia, should be approved, for example, by United Nations or under United Nations procedures. We cannot build the democracy and the rule of law in the occupied countries. Countries like Moldova, Georgia, and now Ukraine are not secure, and they will continue to be vulnerable without a very clear and strong international rules and institutions. EU, after experience with Eastern Partnership, have all arguments and expertise to be a leader in the promoting of these reforms. Let's help Europe to do this. Only Ukrainian case is enough to understand that we cannot postpone the reforms of these international organizations, and it is our duty to try to change this situation. Why I spoke about this needs to reform international institutions, because we see the mechanisms and instruments of EU, which EU have, are not efficient, and reforms which we can insist on international level can give another possibilities and instruments to EU to make us or our region more secure. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much for your presentation and for your description of the situation what you have internally in Moldova. And of course, we have learned, and it goes without saying that, as we were saying before, reforms, successful reforms, and to say more precisely, irreversibility of reforms are never guaranteed. It was, by the way, Kalman who was saying before, and you just echoed and further supplemented his what he was saying, that the EU has been soft in enforcing the rule of law in Moldova. And perhaps, having said this, I will have first question from my side to you, and then I will open the floor, and you are free to ask questions to any panelist you want. The first question will be from my side to you. You of course, have covered, although partly, what the EU should be doing, what other international actors should be doing, and what has to be done internally, domestically in Moldova to change the situation, to change the dynamics. Of course, one cannot say and attribute the single sort of a solution to any institution, including the European Union, to come up with something, judicial solution. But of course, what would be your sort of recommendations, first to the European Union, to other international actors, perhaps to the United States, of course, and what would be your recommendation, what has to be done domestically? Thank you.
Thank you. First of all, to be stronger, to fight their values. I believe in power of example. People will follow you if you have good results. People will trust and will do the same if they will see that you have success and you respect your declarations. If not, they will lose this trust, and they practically will be lost by us. This is why for us it's very important to have guarantees. I will speak here about our case. My organization promoted and defended human rights in Transnistria region for a long period. We represent European Court a lot of cases from Transnistria, cases about human rights violations. And of course, the local regime, separatist regime, or de facto regime, was very uncomfortable with us. And they started criminal case against us. The accusation was we are danger for their statehood, nothing more. No serious or real accusations. And we practically assist during last 2 years on the silent from international institutions. Only United Nations, 3 special rapporteurs, and Council of Europe. Other institutions prefer to be very diplomatic and to keep silence. And this is a very bad signal for local civil society from Transnistria, from Moldova also, but also for people. Because if human rights defenders are not protected and are not defended, of course nobody will do the same. And this is the aim why they persecute human rights defenders and they're not allowed to enter in this region. Thank you.
Any questions? Before I adjourn the meeting, because as I realize it's quite a late hour, but please go ahead.
Yeah, thank you very much. Please State University. You mentioned that 1/3 of the population supposed to drop towards EU line in Moldova. I could say that the same is the changing tendency in Georgia as well, decrease of popularity of EU. Do you think that there is a time, this is the reason that these countries and EU as well is losing vis-à-vis the Russian disinformation campaign in these countries, and there is a time to create a bilateral or trilateral format to fight these Russian disinformation policies? Thank you.
Well, I think it's a question not only to, I suppose, to Moldovan parents, as well as to others, and to others to come up with this response. Welcome.
I will answer very shortly. Yes, first of all, because of disinformation and manipulation from Russian media, first of all, but also from local media which are pro-Russian. And the second is because of our politicians, political forces in Moldova, like mentioned Mr. Kalonijay. From 2009, they declare that they are pro-Europeans. In reality, they simulated reforms, and the result of these simulations is very bad. The situation in Moldova became worse than 8 years ago. This is why people started to make association of this party or these forces, political forces, with EU. This is why I will repeat, I believe and I trust very much in power of example. Thank you.
If I may just a few words on what you asked. The popular vote for integration was at its peak in 2014-2015 in Ukraine. In 2016, we saw some decrease of numbers, but still it's quite high. If it is the outcome of losing of information warfare, to some extent, yes. And I could draw your attention to some initiatives already elaborated by experts of the world. There were some initiatives done multilaterally in region of Eastern Partnership, just seeing what messages are in media of each and every country out of 6. And it was surprisingly that maybe 60% are the same. But basically the problem is what was there, that we do not have information about each country. For example, Ukraine does not have information about Georgia. In Georgia, about Belarus, and so on and so forth. So basically, there is no connectivity on informational level, to say the least. It basically influences economic cooperation and so on and so forth. So yes, we should maybe try to build up on this situation and to use multilateral fora for that. And unfortunately, the task force, which is operational under EAS for just counteracting disinformation, it is too small to counteract in terms of size, in terms of finance, too small to counteract the big machine which is just employed against us.
Please.
Thank you very much.
I'm sorry, is there any other questions? Because, well, of Of course, you go ahead, but if there are no other questions.
There is one.
Okay. Then that particular one is going to be the last one, if you don't mind. Okay.
Thank you, Rusmeta Professor from Georgian Institute for Strategic Studies. As Mr. Mahmoud has mentioned, there are countries which are observing the success stories of certain countries, in this case in the framework of Eastern Partnership. Do you think that there is still a hope for Azerbaijan, Belarus, and Armenia to closer integrate within the Eastern Partnership framework, and what can it be to make these countries more interested? I think it would be even more interesting to have the representatives of these particular countries in the panel, because their perspective on the Eastern Partnership is quite different from how we Moldovians, Georgians, and Ukrainians perceive this platform.
Thank you. Good question. Gautam?
Yes, well, I will. Yeah. I think that Eastern Partnership as a framework is very good, and it gives possibility to all partners, all Eastern partners, to socialize with European Union and to Europeanize, to make reforms to the extent of their ambition. So, unfortunately, in Azerbaijan, in Armenia, in Belarus, there is no enough ambition to become closer to you, to become aspirant of the EU membership, etc. So we see that there is pragmatic desire in Armenia, in Azerbaijan, for example, to establish good relations with the European Union, to, for example, trade, to establish different sectorial partnerships, and to go deeper towards functional integration wherever it's possible. But in the same time, these partnerships have limits. For example, for Azerbaijan, what is the limit? Limit is changing of a governance. If there is no will to change governance system in Azerbaijan, then it's limited. They can become close to European Union up to a certain extent. The same with Armenia. If Armenia has more ambition to go together with Russia in competing trade arrangement to the what European Union offers to the countries through association agreements, then of course it's limited. Armenia cannot become take the same stake in EU's internal market as Georgia, Ukraine, or Moldova. So, but despite of all this multilateral cooperation is very important. It pushes region for Europeanization, for reforms, for democratization, for all kinds of things, which is very important for EU also. And I think that that's why Eastern Partnership will survive, will continue. But my idea, and idea which is supported by Mr. Maksak, Gennady, and others also, I know a lot of people support this idea, to create trilateral cooperation with European Union, from quadrilateral, say, European Union and 3 associated states. It's not against Eastern Partnership as a unique, as a whole framework. It's in favor of deepening relations of these 3 countries, which is absolutely possible. And imagine the situation that neighborhood policy exists as it's for 16 countries, right? But Eastern Partnership was reducing the number of countries which go with other ambition towards the European Union. And now inside of Eastern Partnership, we can identify a group of 3 states which go even deeper. So all these frameworks stay as they are, but they are deepening and deepening like Matryoshka. So we have chance, these 3 countries, so we shall use it without damaging any aspirations or any desire of other partners from Eastern Partnership. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. By the way, the principle of differentiation was put from the very beginning in 2009 when Eastern Partnership was bilateral. But that I was talking about, it's kind of echoes to what Angela Merkel was saying about the European Union, that the European Union needs to become a multi-speed union. So Kata was in fact
multi-speed Eastern Partnership.
Multi-speed Eastern partners, which of course would not, block the future of future dynamics of others as well, as well to accelerate their aspirations and approximation to the European Union. Question? No? Okay. Then I was strongly advised by the panelists to stand up and to go and to read one of the questions I have to choose. And I will ask you now. I have one of the questions from the screen.
You will increase number of people in the audience.
I don't know which one to choose. Please, you advise me. Which question?
Turkish referendum.
Turkish referendum. Okay, where is that? How much the Turkish referendum is connected to the fact that Turkey was relentlessly or I don't know. So sorry for my English.
Resultlessly.
Okay, whatever is written there, knocking on your door. What about perceptions of countries seeking candidacy?
Nobody. If you want, I can start. Please, sorry for intervening again, but I think that I come from the Georgia's case. So the referendum in Turkey, results of referendum in Turkey, certainly damaged Turkish-European integration path, and it stops practically the process of Turkish accession to the European Union. For Georgia, it's of course it's very, very bad. These are very bad news. Why? Because I was talking that EU needs a regional context in order to recognize European aspirations of a country. So Georgia had this possibility earlier than now we are talking about Eastern Partnership and 3 countries, etc. Black Sea, possibility of using Black Sea as a regional context. Turkey was, Georgia could be presented as a territorial continuation of the Turkish accession to European Union. So enlargement of the European Union needs to satisfy criteria of geographical proximity. And Georgia was becoming involved in this geographical proximity for the enlargement process of the Union, while Turkey was going to the European Union. But if Turkey stops, then this way is closed for us, for Georgia, because their geographical proximity doesn't work more. That's why we now have only one way. This is through Black Sea, that you recognize this possibility of enlargement to the Black Sea area from the north of the Black Sea. This is, for us, implications for Georgia.
Okay. So let us thank the panel and panelists, and let me thank you all.
Sen bir siyah onu da